Hey guys, and welcome to our third episode of the recap show for Too Complicated for History. This week we had guest Dr. Marcus P. Nevius, who talked at length about the Great Dismal Swamp. Loved the episode. I know I say that every show, but it really does keep getting better. Um, please listen to it. Today I have two questions for you guys. The first, we talk about enslaved society and the complexities of the inner workings of slave society, right? As we go down that path, we soon discover that with each new level of understanding comes an equally new level of complexity. When things become too complicated for history, it would be a disservice to use that, right, as an excuse to never untangle that web of complications. So, how do we attempt to uncomplicate them? This one's up for
with this
grabs.
podcast. With this
Yeah,
podcast. The end.
yeah.
Lynn is feeling spicy.
You're
That's
welcome.
yeah. By doing our jobs. No, what I think we do. I mean, you know what? It's funny. Like Lynn is being kind of spicy with how she came in like that, but it's the truth, right? Is we take the time to tell these stories,
Mhm.
and it's important to do that. You know, we often talk about how these things just get thrown onto the cutting room floor, and it's like there is no cutting room floor of history. You know, it's a fun metaphor as far as like when we're describing the show, but if you think about it, it's like that's actually an atrocious thing that happens so regularly, which is things just get left behind. And so our goal is to just bring to light these complexities, and it's yeah, I mean that's kind of it. Other than I guess from the historian side, Lynn, I'll let you kind of answer that. But just our interpretations of it.
Yeah, I mean, these are the stories that as historians we love so much, and that, if it's a story you've already heard, then we're likely not researching it. We're looking for more stories and we're looking for new perspectives to complicate it. And this is what we love so much. It's what gives you um, the deeper story and more perspectives. And that comes with more sources and a deeper understanding of a story we may know. And so it's sort of taking all of this stuff that we historians love and then trying to make it as entertaining as possible while remaining accurate and useful and ideally relevant for the day, and then passing it along to the general public and, of course, the history buffs and everyone who listens to our podcast so they don't, have to go get a graduate degree. They can just, hear the distilled version from me and Isaac.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I will. I just want to add, like, it's a daunting task to know everything about everything, right? Like, in fact, it's
Oh,
an
yeah.
impossible task. Um, we just want to take as much time as we can and just provide as much as we can, and that's why we hope that you enjoy these episodes when you're on your way to work, in your car or out for a walk. Um, and just take a moment to get a larger context, get a larger idea of the inner weavings of honestly just the early American society as of right now. Um, so, expanding that view globally and through the entirety of human life. Good Lord, that is a lot of info.
Yeah.
And, we're
Well,
setting you up for, if you wanna go to the library or purchase some books, um, we're kinda setting you up for that because what we're giving you, there's a lot more research on, probably mostly primary sources because we are giving you, stories that a lot of books hadn't been written on, and hey, if you're a great writer, why not take a deep dive and maybe you wanna write a book on one of these topics or you wanna write a screenplay. That's, you know, we're kind of setting you up and then you can go from there and, hopefully we'll get some more interest in these stories.
yeah, and that is to say that, we're not going to complete the job of uncomplicating something that is
Nope.
complicated. We just continue to untangle the web, so to speak, so that we can understand more and continue to have that conversation. But it does start here. If it hasn't started somewhere else already, we just get that opportunity to bring it to you. So yeah, okay, awesome. Great answers. So this episode also talks about how enslaved individuals didn't often write letters, mostly because of limited access to education and some other reasons, but mostly that. You know, letters are how we typically learn about the past. So without that, what is the process we use now to unearth the history of the enslaved, and like what more has this process led to us discovering about them in society?
Well, one thing that Marcus Nevius says in the episode is that the sources were sort of the bane of his existence, and I very much can relate to that because it is difficult. I talked about in another one of these recaps about understanding the audience, and with enslaved people, a lot of times, if not all of the time, you're learning about them through the eyes of enslavers. And so you're only learning what those individuals are sharing. So you are missing a lot. And there are other sources. They're not going to be as good as letters, but there are a runaway ad, for example. The reason this is so great for historians is because it usually says what the individual was wearing. So you get an idea of clothes, a physical appearance. It may say that the runaway ad may say, we think this individual is going here because that's where their family perhaps was sold to. And so you can get a lot of insight, even though it's from the enslaver's perspective, you can get a lot of insight on individuals. And so there are some sources where you can get more information. Again, it's still from the enslaver's viewpoint, but it's more individual and it's sort of less biased than the letters and individual things like that. But there are also, ship manifests. There are some other documents that are useful sources, but honestly, it really is just like Marcus says. It's kind of a bane of our existence because everything we really want just doesn't exist. And
Yeah.
that gets really frustrating, but the answer isn't to not tell the stories. The answer
Right.
is to find ways to use what we can find and to use sources that perhaps we've never used before. So that's kind of how we go at it.
Yeah. Doing the work, right? Doing the hard work.
Mhm.
Isaac actually jokes about how Marcus spends months, if not years, of his life traveling to different places trying to find these things, and then he
Mhm.
gets to read it all in a few hours, in a book. And thank you for doing the work, right?
Mhm.
Um, the other thing, forgive me, what was it? It's yeah. I mean, what's really incredible about this episode is it's just humanizing, and it's so important to humanize that era, right? Like it's these people, these are people. They're not cogs in a machine. Like the idea of slavery is fairly abstract, I would say today, right? Like it's well known, the atrocities of it are well known, the brutality, all of it's well known, but it's not something that for the most part most people can relate to on a day-to-day basis. And that's not to say that there aren't struggles or things that people are experiencing now, because I don't want to um, not recognize that, right? Um, but it was just it is a really, for us it's like let's make this idea not abstract, like let's make it
Mhm.
human. And the more we can do that, and the more we can make people rather than just words in books, or rather than
Mhm.
ideas from the past, like that's what we're trying to do. And yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's all we can do, right?
Mhm.
There's obviously a lot more to this than what we have the time now to talk about, but we do go into a lot more depth in our episode, which I
Mhm.
encourage you guys to please check out on Odyssey or wherever you get your podcasts. While you're there, please subscribe, please share, like, send it to all your friends. And I really appreciate you, Lynn, and you, Pat, taking the time to speak with me today. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks, Jordan.